Hi, bows and bow ties. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the Black Opinionated Woman, also known as the Bow. All right, so I haven't been on here as recently because I have been preoccupied. But as you can tell from the title, I still have some questions for the trans community. Now, this is probably going to be triggering for some, but I need to just get it all out. Okay, so for those of you who are in podcast land, you know I'm doing this over YouTube. So sometimes I'll reference something on. So if it seems like the conversation is disjointed, it's because I probably flashed something. But anyway, for those of you who wanted to join in, of course, I still can't figure out why StreamYard like hates me. So I have to upload the thumbnail later. But this is what you should have, or what you will select for those of you who actually take a look at this later. Now, let me talk about this thumbnail for a second. I purposefully chose this thumbnail. I chose a picture of me, um, no makeup, hair is not contrived, right? It's kind of like, why would you choose that? I chose this is actually what my hair looked like. I took this picture a few days ago, but there was no all over. So anyway, so what you see here, I have up here, it says bow all natural, but that's actually entirely true. I do have on my lip gloss, so I'm a big fan of lip gloss. But as you can see, my hair is a little. I don't know what's going on. I have a whole point to this, by the way. My hair is doing its own thing. So yeah, actually, I need to refresh this at some point. But anyway, this is what I look like. All right. So why am I focusing so much on what my outward appearance looks like now? I I say this because now, granted, I'm admit that much I see is probably in the media in relation to trans. I don't know too many people who are trans, or at least they very well could be. I just don't know. I'm going based off of what I have seen, and this is the only real collection of experiences I've had. I've only seen one or two, maybe three other trans people total in my life. When I see people on television, much of it's like, I guess, what is you have to purposefully be on there either indicating that you're trans, or I'll see people who are part of a community that engages in like drag shows who also are transitioning. So my thing is this, you know, when I think of trans women, right? Men who to women or who present as women, I feel much of what I have seen now, much, and like I said, I take this with a grain of salt. This is what I'm seeing on television. It is the most performative parts of feminine womanhood, and you can go ahead and slice and dice all of these definitions. I'm like, but they choose to present as overly done with the hair and the nails and the makeup. And most of the women, no, not to say that they don't wear some form of makeup or whatever. Most of the women that I see in my everyday life, no one that. That's not to say that people don't wear makeup or go to the extremes for occasions and that type of thing. But in general, I don't see women who are on every level. Most women I know, especially the older you get, you're trying to make sure that you are engaging in really good skincare and that type of thing. Most women I know, and now it could be environmental, right? You're engaged in trying to make sure that your family is taken care of, so your priorities shift, right? Your priority, generally speaking, there's exceptions to every rule. Your priority isn't based on waking up every day and going through all the I guess processes of like extreme makeup, hair, nails, and all of that stuff. I notice also people when men present as women, um, there is this they change the way they talk, right? Like so I'm finding that it goes from talking like I don't know what you in your mind, everybody has a mental model of what is representative of a man, right? Um, I find they always sat and they talk like this, and I'm like, why are you talking like that? Because most women don't talk like that, and there's this constant playing with the hair, and I don't know, like even when I wore my hair like super sleek, straight, and stuff like that, I never was constantly playing with my hair. Um, I So I don't understand because to me, I recognize the whole goal is to, well, let me rephrase that. Maybe the goal, I think one of the goals is to pass or blend in or whatever it is, right? But the vast majority of women aren't doing those things. I'm not saying they've never done those things, but in their everyday walk in life, they're not doing those things. So that's part of my confusion. I'm just like, why are you resorting to such extreme forms of representative femininity and womanhood? But so anyway, I have a ton of questions. I've written these down, and I must admit, I am still not organized because I've written these down over the last week or two. I've been so crazy busy that I just could not get it together. And I do have a hard stop. So at some point, you're going to probably see me through where I can get through and then just come back some other time. So let's go with some of these other questions. And it's not necessarily in order, I have a ton of them. One of the questions I believe is this, or one of the questions I have is, and this is for people who are in the trans community. Now, before I start asking my questions, look, if you're going to be like in your feelings on things, then be in your feelings. And I want to say this, I don't know where to find, right? I cannot learn through heuristics, right? Because not in the environment. I don't know. I mean, is there like a trans environment? Like, let me go look up the trans environment, right? Like, so if you're not around trans individuals on a daily basis, you can't learn through heuristics, right? Now, why did I mention this? Black people know a lot about white people because we are in predominantly white environments. We're in their spaces, right? So you learn a lot about white people, whereas white people don't necessarily know as much about black people because they don't go into black spaces. So when I say it's not like there's this huge community where I can say I need to go sit down and talk to the trans community, like especially where I am. They're very conservative. So I can't learn via heuristics. When I try to look out on the web, I'm, it doesn't lend any real clarity to anything. The only thing that it seems that I'm finding is when you question or provide opposition to what has been stated, there's a lot of anger. That's what I perceive. All right, let me hold on. These are just my opinions. There. And by the way, if you're watching this, go ahead and subscribe like this because I'm amazing. I am. Because I'm willing to have the hard conversations. I'll deep dive a lot because everyone's got stuff going on. But I think I needed to just slowly kind of like walk the dog on this, right? Because there's so much that goes into this. So go ahead and like and subscribe because I think I'm entertaining. But this is kind of a serious topic. So yeah, I said before I start asking, typically you want to go ahead and do some research and educate yourself. The fact of the matter is, I'm not in a trans community where I can observe and learn, right? It's not readily accessible. When I look information up on the internet, it's not clear to me. I still don't understand stuff. It's just, in my opinion, it's all over the place. It's almost, I feel like it's, I don't know. I don't want to say cognitive dissonance. I just feel like it's like there's this I am. I feel like in some ways it's like trying on femininity. I don't know. It's so confusing. It nothing really matches. So it's not like I can just, So if you have some information, if you have a good book or something, put it in the comment. Let me know. So let me start asking my questions. This is one of my questions. Let me start ticking this off because I don't think I'm going to get it all done in this video. Gender is taught. Hold on one more. What do you need? Hold on a second. You know I'm live. So we'll have this conversation later. Can you my door, please? Close my door, please. Put something on it. Okay. So this is my question. Um, at 10:30. If gender is taught in society, gender is taught in societal, right? It's based off of norms, right? If you change societies, does gender exist? I feel like I'm going to stump myself, right? Because it's going to lead me back to the whole non-binary. Non doesn't necessarily assign identify with gender, yet they're part of the community, the LGQBT community with the trans people. So I'm like, how are they if you binary, non-binary people, trans people believe in gender? So then if you change societies, what does that mean? Does that mean that if you go to a society that they're like, hey, you may in Western societies can get away with not identifying with a gender, but in this society, you do. But in conversely, if you are trans and you move to a society where they say womanhood is represented by wearing a red tie. What that mean for the trans people? Like, I don't know. Like, the whole thing is so confusing, and I very well could be conflating things. But the reason why it is confusing because the community, the LGBTQ community, has so many variations that I can't even tell. Is it even because it keeps? It's like I can't even tell. It reminds me of the difference between like a nation and then a state and a nation state, right? A state has boundaries, right? Recognize boundaries. Whereas a nation is a collection of individuals that identify with something. You have a nation of Islam. You can have a, a nation of I don't know, people who identify with um, nature. You guys, can you get that off? Sorry. So I always wonder about this whole like if gender is based on then what does that mean? The LQB community itself is like when you've got a group of people who don't even identify with gender and this and the other, then you've got a group of people who are like, this is what I was assigned or not. Um, and then so I'm just kind of like the community there's no boundaries, which means can heterosexual people be part of that community? What is the community? The community in itself makes no sense. You can be a gender, not be a gender. You can be a woman, not be a woman. I don't understand what the heck it is. And then you've got people who will say that they were born a man, they now identify as a woman who is attracted to men. In my mind, it makes you homosexual because in my mind, I'm still thinking like you're still a man by biology. So it's real confusion with all this society stuff. Gender is based on standards. I'm just figuring out like what does this mean? Because the community in itself is confusing. What is the community? What is it? I don't even know how many letters are in there now. So that's the reason why I struggle with all of this. So that's the one question. Let me get that off. I want to go back to this gender warrior for a second. Now, I am not a doctor, but I am trying to understand. I looked at the American Psychiatric Association right now. I mean, there's people who are going to debate, not debate, but basically, with gender dysphoria being my understanding is it's a medical diagnosis, which means it's a disorder, which implies something, right? That there's something not right, per day, right? So it's a mental disorder, DSM-5. So I'm like, if it's a clinical diagnosis of a person that has psychological distress regarding their sex and gender, then like, why aren't we trying to treat the disorder, right? Because in most cases, you would treat the disorder. You would have like a plan instead of changing something as far as denying something, right? So, and that really becomes with my words because I'm still trying to formulate. If there is a disorder in terms of how you view yourself, what let's say, and I probably shouldn't even compare it to, well, I don't know, I would compare anorexia or bulimia, something like that. You see yourself completely differently, right? If you're an anorexic, you would treat the anorexic, right? You would go through some, I don't know, mental counseling or something like that, and put someone on a path to healthy eating or helping them with their environment or something like that, right? You wouldn't say, well, because you identify with this idea of, seeing your body in this way, then let's go ahead and just feed it all the way. Yeah, let's just let you continue to do this, right? We'll continue to coast in the behavior of not eating or something like that, right? So when I see this medical diagnosis for someone with body dysmorphia, instead of, and like I said, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know what the treatment is. I'm sure maybe not, I don't know. Hopefully people are seeking counseling. So if there's counseling, similarly like a an anorexic or bulimic, whatever, why do we actually, like, why aren't we treating the mental disorder? Why are we co-signing the belief that the person is something else? Like, we've gotten to the point now where like don't even care about the biology and the science. So now it's just like I now feel like I am the opposite or something like that. Then to, okay, let's just reassign everything. To me, I'm like, the person is still troubled. So many people who are willing to lengths change who you are. Like it's really, I feel like it's a little sad that troubled, to be that unhappy, to be that miserable. I I don't have reference point. Like I said, you can take that with a grain of salt. Look, there's gonna be some people who wanna, like, be snarky, whatever. I gotta let you be where you are. I gotta let you, especially if you're trans and you're upset, because I know I'm asking questions, I'm challenging, right? I have the right to ask. So, much of this is because I don't understand if it's classified as a mental dis, instead of treating the disorder, we've now co-signed with the patient, the person. And you know what? We're just gonna go ahead and just change your hormonal level to fit your, we're going to do top and bottom changes. Um, it goes even deeper than that. I don't have a, so then there's this thing about all of these affirmations. You gotta affirm via prone sex changes and hormones and changes and surgeries. And I'm like, I almost, doctors who are doing these, it's what word do I want to use? I don't feel like it's healthy. I feel like it's dangerous. And I don't know the answer. Wrong before, I'll be wrong again. Cannot wrap my head around it because I don't understand why we would co-sign. It's a lot. But there's that question. We're done with that question. Um, I, or let me see. I have all these. I think I asked questions before. Non-binary, gender or not about gender. I think it's interesting that it's a whole other thing. Um, so this is the question I have. Why are we looking based on this order? So, like, dealing with the trans community, right? Like, if it's not change laws, unless, like, I'm not talking about those people who are harming people, because the way I like, these are still people. Like, we don't go hard beating them. I don't know. That's a whole other thing that we need to do, so-called straight people who have issues. Okay, like we're not gonna. That's a whole separate. But if we have a going back to the animals, right? They have to be treated right. You treat women. Why do you think this way, right? And then get healthy eating habits. I don't know what treatment plan is. What they don't do is say, "Hey, co-sign," and say, "You know what? So eat less." Now, I'm overbuying this. This is the reason why these are just like trying to change over people who have a disorder. So my concern is now it's getting to the point where we're doing so much to care about a group of people who have a disorder to the point that it's affecting the people who don't have a body dysmorphia disorder. Sorry. Phone keeps ringing. So these are the kind of things I'm like, well, I hate when this happens. So look, inquiring minds want to know. I don't understand what's happening. Let me check that off. So then I get to this thing where I'm dealing with this pronoun thing. I took my son last week to go visit a college, and the gentleman, or at least he was presenting as a gentleman, refers to himself as he, him. And I just kind of feel like, why is that even necessary? Like, I didn't even care. I'm like, I need to give you the information. I don't care what you refer to yourself as. I don't care if you're straight or if you're not. Like, it's just a thing. And why do you want me to know? It's not going to change anything for me. So with that being said, I feel like this is now going down this slope of having to keep up with a whole bunch of pronouns. What happens if you don't identify as a gender? What if you don't identify as any sort of human? Right? Because humans have genders. So now it's a slippery slope because when you're binary, I'm like, this is going down a slippery slope. So now we're having to butcher language because a small population has a disorder. I'm just trying to figure out what the heck is going on. So now I've got to remember else and the one talking. So this is the thing. It's not like saying we should prohibit people who are in civil rights and all those kinds of things. Like, I don't think that's the issue. I think what I'm trying to understand is the community is so confusing And I'm saying this just to elicit a response, but it's a little bit whacked out. I'm like, how is it that all flat? I'm like, to me, we have to over define, like if you're adding, it's not a community, it's almost like a trending lifestyle because it's out there that I'm like, everyone's part of the community is so strangely not consistent that I'm like, actually heterosexual. I mean, I don't know. So yeah, I don't know. So I feel like I remember years and years ago, I was at work and I am on the younger side of Gen X. So I was talking with some millennials. And the millennials actually had me laughing too. Because I had come over to ask a question about something related talking among themselves. I just happened to be sitting in a separate area. And the one guy says, "Hey, did you know that as categorized something like 76 genders?" I was like, "What?" He's like, "Identify with 76 genders." This is probably, oh gosh, I don't know, maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago. I can't remember how long ago. It was quite a bit of time ago. He said there were 76 genders. I was like, unless we heard outer space, something like, no. Whether you identify as separate, like there's like, and then granted, there was this, they were splitting hairs between sex and gender, right? And at the time, I didn't know there was supposedly a difference. Like I heard about it, I didn't investigate. They're talking about 76 genders. So I'm like, well, that leaves the potential for us to constantly be offending everyone. We can't possibly, keep up with all these pronouns. You can't. If there's all these genders, how many pronouns are there? I can't keep up with that. Now I gotta remember when people want to identify as he, her, he, him, his, him, his. It's driving me crazy. Okay. Then I want to know. Okay. Um. Oh, this is. Yeah, I want to go back to this. If transgender or gender is a mental disorder, why are we addressing things with changing the physicality? It's mental. Now, when I wrote that question, do understand, I do recognize that it's not all addressed with the physical, right? There is, I believe, I think, maybe there might be mental counseling, but this is a mental disorder. So what I don't understand is why are we addressing a mental problem with a lot of physical changes, which is a lot of the changing of your outward expression, right? From a physicality standpoint. I'm not just talking about clothes and hair. I'm talking about like changing your actual body. If this is a if this is a mental disorder, why are they addressing things with a physical change? I don't understand that. I just kind of feel like going back to one of my previous questions. Oh, I'm itchy. If if you identify as something else, like gender is just societal. I'm like, but how you identify is different from expression, right? If you are born a man by what we would use in normal language without having to split hairs and say, oh, well, you were assigned to sex and this is that and gender versus sex. Look, if you were born a man and then you decide that I now identify as a woman, why can't you just identify as a woman, right? Because gender is societal. Why do you care, right? Just identify as a woman. Why is it suddenly you have to go and get like everything done in like this hyper manifestation of femininity? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Just want to remind you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button because I'm amazing in every way and can't do any wrong. Okay. Um, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. I don't know how to take my um how do I take my little thing off? Bow all natural. Like I don't know how to do that. I should probably figure that out, right? So with that being said, I just kind of feel like, yeah, if you are trans, why can't you just, I mean, I'm sorry, if you're a man who now identifies as a woman or a woman who now identifies as a man, why can't you just identify? I'm just asking. Um, it doesn't make sense. So going back to some of these other things, let's see. So now I feel like this is the thing. The small community has decided that you're not allowed to identify people. You can't use pronouns based on biology. You can only use it based off of identification. Says who? Since when did a group of people with a mental disorder determine that you should identify people by pronouns based off of their identity, not biology? Why? Why? Why is it that your group, get to determine how people use pronouns and change language? So you got a small group of people with a mental disorder deciding that we want to change language. Pronouns should be used based off your identification, not based off of biology or your DNA or science. Says who? I don't understand that. So now language norms and conventions because you're dealing with your mental disorder. That's crazy. I mean, like the audacity. And then to get mad at people for making the mistake. I'm like, well, I can get mad at you for saying, hey, wait a second. Why are you using your pronouns based off of your biology, how you were born? And I'm not talking about the edge cases because there's always somebody who's gonna be like, there, I know somebody who was born with both. I'm like, we're not talking about the edge case. The vast majority of people are not in the edge case. If you got to take the edge case to try to make a point, then all you're doing is proving to be true. The way I look at it is similarly in anything else, in nature or whatever is in science. There's always some aberration, there's always an outlier, right? It doesn't mean that the rest of the data doesn't hold to be true. So, having someone who may have been born with two sets of sexes or whatever going on doesn't negate the majority of the population. I said what I said. So now my other question is, if your feelings change regarding your sex, right? So like if you're trans and then you detransition, then how does this affect your pronouns? I'm like, what does this even mean? You've got people detransitioning. I don't know what the percentage is, so I don't want to speak to that. But you've got people who are detransitioning. And so now I'm like, what does this mean? And maybe we should never have co-signed all of those changes in the first place because it has been classified as a mental disorder. So why would you as a doctor co-sign this belief in this behavior? So I want to make it clear. Me questioning what's happening in the community doesn't mean I'm a transphobe. I'm not a phobe. And no matter how many ways you want to slice it, I really am not. But I can challenge. I can engage in some sort of critical thinking. And part of it's because I don't have any real good ears. And if somebody can point me to a resource, like I said, I can't learn through hearing. The community is small. So I can't learn through observations and have those general rules of thumb, right? I'm not around a bunch of, as far as I know, trans and I don't go looking for it. I don't go dissectable. I'm too self-absorbed myself. I really am. Oh, it's really confusing. I don't have any good answers. I don't I don't know. I don't know. I'm trying to gather up so many of my notes here because and I have more, but I'm probably gonna have to come back for another video. Anyway, I think I've addressed this one. Why don't the trans why does wait, what? Why can't the trans community just engage in gender expression instead of changing gender? And that I don't understand, right? And like I said, I don't understand how you can just say, I feel like, let me back up. So part of it is, how can someone who was born a man say, I feel like I was born in the wrong body, I feel like a woman? How do you know? How do you know what it feels like to be a woman? I've never understood how you can say, like, to me, it sounds like they're trying on womanhood, right? How do you identify with being a woman? Why? Because you grew your hair out, you grew some nails, maybe even had some surgeries. You know what it's like to be a woman any more than I know what it's like to be a man or feel like I'm a man. What part of womanhood do you identify with? Do I identify with monthly cycles? Um, mm, yes, I know not all women can birth babies, but do you do you identify with the physical changes that happen to your body as a woman? Because if you've been born a man, I don't care how many uh, pieces of cake you gobble down like Tic Tac, it's still not the same. All you're doing is addressing some of the physical features, but I'm like, you don't know what it's like to be a woman. Which is one of the reasons why when I had that conversation several months back, one of my videos I talked about Leah Thomas. I'm like, the audacity for you to be like, oh, I now identify as a woman, but you have the benefit of being a man. You train as a man. You have the lung capacity of a man. You got the muscular development as a man. You've got the broad shoulders and the height of a man. So you got the strength of a man, and now you get to try on womanhood. I'm like, you cheated the process, actually. You didn't grow up as a woman and train as a woman and dealt with all of the things that come with being an athlete as a woman, right? You got to bypass that. I just feel like everything about it is just so confusing to me. Yeah, so when people get upset because I ask these questions, they're good questions. So when people like decide that I feel like, I'm like, what do you mean you feel like a woman? How does a woman feel? What does that feel? And what part of womanhood are you identifying with? I mean, I don't have fibroids. Are you identifying with like fibroids? I mean, I'm trying to understand. Are you identifying with those feelings of maybe not being able to carry a baby? What if you, what about the women who miscarry? Can you identify with that? Can you identify with what it's like for your body to change like woman changes? I'm not going to be gross and start talking about sexual, like the sexual things that women feel, right? What does that mean? What do you mean you can? So what part? I mean, I feel it's almost offensive. Like you're trying on femininity now that you've had some boobs implanted and maybe even changed the bottom. I don't know. You've grown your nails and you've grown your hair and you are an expert at applying makeup. What part of womanhood do you identify with? Do you identify with, um, having deal with the work? Do you identify with having people question your intellect? Do you identify with, I don't know, I'm just thinking off the top of my head. What do you identify with? Um, I'll tell you what else I've noticed. I've stop in a few minutes. Um, I just feel like many times when I hear the trans community, I really think this is based on a lot of postmodernism. There's a lot of I. Then again, that wasn't a fair statement because I think here in the United States, we're so individualistic, right? We're not like in community. Um, but I hear a lot of I. And it's like, I identify and I'm not this and I'm not that. I feel like really the trans community really wants to remove themselves from society and accountability. I don't think that the trans community wants to be more confusion, right? Like a small group of people wanting to change language based off of identity versus the vast majority of people whose language based off of biology. I'm like, the audacity. So I feel like if you have a group of people who have a mental disorder, okay, the way I look at it is like it's like an anomaly, right? Me that think that those who are those who identify as trans or whatever, non-binary, whatever, it doesn't mean that I think they're less human because I feel like we're all God's people. Now, for those of you who don't believe in God, that's not my problem. That's for you to take up with whatever it is you believe or not believe in. But I do believe we're all God's people. This is a sidebar. I was Bible study, and I was so proud. I was listening to one of the reverends of the church I attend. I guess apparently there was a lady who was upset that one of the pastors in my church had helped somebody who was part of the LGQBT community, and apparently the pastor. I don't know what capacity that the pastor had helped. She was in some sort of need. Okay. And so in Bible study, we were talking about it was in relation to the Samaritans, whatever. We were talking about the Samaritans in the book of John. Anyway, somehow it came up and he said, well, the woman just said she was going to leave the church. And he said, okay, well, you don't have to tell me, like, not every church is for everyone. And she mentioned that she left the church because she did not appreciate the head pastor um supporting someone who was part of the community. And I'm like, what? And it's so funny because the guy, pastor or whatever, he was in the Bible study. He said, I told that woman, like, I'm sure you will find a church that will treat you like the way you treat a adult. Because, like I said, I feel like we're all God's people. So whether you believe in God or not, that's not for me. That's for you to work out. So when I say this about the trans community and the non-binary stuff like that, I still believe that we are all his people. But what I do have confusion if there is a mental disorder, I don't understand why you have a group of people now who have decided that I have a mental disorder, so I've decided to identify myself this way, and now I'm going to change language to fit how I identify versus how the vast majority of people identify language based on biology. I thought that was just so interesting. So anyway, getting back to what I'm just saying, like you have a group of people who have a mental disorder. It's like an anomaly, right? Doesn't mean they're bad people. It means that they've got something going on. And I'm not a professional, but just because an anomaly exists doesn't mean that the rest of what everyone is incorrect or wrong or whatever. You don't get to one's identity and how and all that good stuff. I'm going to say this again, and then I have a hard stop. If you don't agree, oftentimes people in that community will call you a fool, and it's not even true. You should be able to question, engage in critical thinking, and have really interesting, uncomfortable conversations without being angry, without calling everybody a phobe because they don't agree with you. Because that's a cop out. It is a cop out. I actually find it to be cowardly. I said it. It is cowardly. I said what I said. I'm not back. Just because someone doesn't agree with you doesn't mean they're a phobe. Just because they don't agree with your lifestyle, just because they are lacking in understanding, and when seeking to find information, they're not getting answers, right? Now, how much time do I have? I have 2 minutes to wrap this up. I just want. Why did I mention that little tidbit there? This is the thing. Oftentimes, when it comes to, I'm going to use race for a second. A lot of Black people feel like, look, I don't have to keep teaching. I'm tired of teaching. Right? Like, who was it? Who's the guy? It'll come to me in a second. Um, he's the one that said, "I believe with equal." Like that. I'm having a moment, and it'll come back to me. The thing is, look, oftentimes we're dealing with race. Black people are like, look, there's plenty of material out there. Um, there's Google. Going to Black spaces, right? You can learn. It's not our job to teach you. And so if you have access to resources and environments and stuff, you have access. They're expecting you to stop asking other Black people to and engage in like carrying the emotional load. But when it comes to the trans thing, as I've been trying to find information now, I do it in tidbits, right? Because I don't have a whole lot of time. I'm like, I'm no more aware or or I don't have any more understanding than what I had like 10 minutes ago, 15 minutes ago, an hour ago, a day ago. And that's the difference. I think the goalpost is moving within the community. It doesn't make sense. So that's the reason why I say when people don't understand and they're questioning, you can't just call everybody a phobe because there's genuine confusion. All right, so that's it. Stop getting angry when people question. You should want them to question. At least they're interested. At least they're trying to wrap their head around what's going on in your community. You should want people to question. You should want people to be engaged. You should want people to seek to understand. But as soon as someone understands and says something that's triggering, people want to say you're a phobe. You're anti this, and I'm like, you're not interested in collaboration. You're interested only in cooperation. I said what I said. All right, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. I have a hard stop, and I guess I'll have to come back for the rest of my conversation. Leave a comment. Leave a comment. Don't be shady because you know I like to block and I like to delete. I got to go to some of my other videos and look at and see what's there too. All right, later.